Welcome to the 6K Sports Sedan and Wagon Challenge presented by Continental Tire. Today we are going to start hacking this thing up, so stay tuned to find out why. As you guys can see, I've done a bit of prep work already, and that has cleared out the entire trunk area of any plastics or anything that could catch fire in preparation to cut the trunk area out for that muffler. Now, in the previous episode, I talked about different ways to do this, and so many of you suggested, well, do it right, put in the M5 floor trunk area. And I've done the research on this. I've actually spoken to a few people that have done this job, and a lot of you make it seem a lot easier than it is, but this is a ton of work to do this the right way, the professional way, and that would be the way to do it. If you're looking for a full OEM clone, if you want it to look the most professional, then that is the way to go. But what you do have to take into consideration is there is a ton of spot welds that need to be removed. There's like metal upon metal stacked up here. It's a very complex area that does need to be cut out. And not only do we have to do it here, we'd have to do it to the other car. For me personally, I think the way we're gonna do it is still a very solid and functional way. So we've got our muffler in on the driver's side here, and first of all, check out the bumper. Luca 242 Customs did an amazing job painting this. Looks so good. But now the challenge we have here is, it looks like I'm going to be able to take the OE mount right here and get it up into this area mounted, which is really nice. However, that is not going to leave me with a lot of room on this side here. So I've got a plan here, and that's going to require just like rejigging the mounts on the muffler, which I'd rather do rather than play with the tunnel on this. But first things first, I think what we need to do is get this guy mounted up into here, and then we can look at everything else. Now you get a better look at what we're dealing with here, and you can see we've got this ledge, which is perfect because I just found this piece of scrap steel, and if I sandwich it right in between there and I hold it up, you can see it's just gonna bolt in right like that, and that's gonna make for a very easy job to mount this up. There you have it. We've got our muffler on there, and I'll tell you what, it's a lot easier to do this than cut the floor out, that is for sure. On this side here, we had a slight little hiccup where you guys saw I just added an L bracket to add a little bit of rigidity here. And on this side, it was just a matter of doing somewhat of the same thing here, just building an aluminum spacer, cutting some holes in the floor there, and then passing the bolts through. As you saw, I moved the mount in, which was absolutely perfect. It worked out so well. And this thing, like, look at this thing. It is not going anywhere. It is on really tight. So I don't think I need that rear mount there. I think it would be a redundancy to just put that in. So we are almost done here. What we're gonna show you now is our solution for putting back some of that shielding in here, the heat shielding, because we don't want to leave it like this. So this is our wagon heat shield, and we're gonna use it again. So you see here, all we did was we just put the mount back on and sucked it through the metal there. This side, however, is much more rounded, which is a little concerning. So I still feel like I can suck it up, or at least tear through it if I need to. What I'm gonna do though is drill a hole right now. There we go. So we've got that spacer plate right here. And truth be told, I don't think this is going to work. I'm pretty confident it's gonna tear a hole in this. I just feel like we've got too far to go up, but I figured we'd give this a try anyway, so let's see what happens. I mean, it's kind of working, right? So I've abandoned that idea. I didn't like the way it was going. So I think all I'm gonna do is just cut it here along the seam. With that heat shielding finalized there and the bumper on, we have this side finalized. The tips are just marginally a little bit over this way, but I think I can correct that with either a washer or, I mean, this bumper's still pretty loose here, so this stuff has to bolt on. But man, all things considered, I think we've got a huge portion down here with this thing fitted up. And now onto the part that I have been dreading, and I'm sure you guys are kind of wondering how we're gonna attempt to do this. And that is cutting out this area right here for that muffler. My buddy Glenn, thank you Glenn, by the way, has hooked me up with this piece out of an M5, which I think is gonna be a huge thing for us, because really this outside panel is very crucial to aligning the muffler properly, and you don't really wanna try to rebuild it. It's like, you know, sectioned here, this way and that way. So having this piece, I think, is gonna be huge. And for you guys, you're gonna get to see how difficult it is to actually drill out all these spot welds, like get rid of all this seam sealer and try to separate this panel from the rest of this, because I am not cutting this on the car at all. That would be very, very bad. Now to separate this panel from our frame rail here, I've got a spot weld cutter kit. I'm not exactly sure if I've got the right one here. This is 3/8 though. I think there's a 5/16 one, which is a little bit smaller. This one looks like it's a tad bit big, but I'm gonna send it because we're not reusing this panel here. So I've got all these spot welds to remove here, and I think a couple over here, and then more here, but these are gonna require removing the seam sealer. And we talked to Luke over at 242 Customs, who said heat it up. Once you heat it up, you can kind of like clean off a bunch of it, and then afterwards come in with a wire brush. I'm gonna try this big bad boy here and see if I can, you know, remove it. This might be a little too aggressive, so I might switch out from that, but that's essentially the process in a gist. This is gonna be time lapse, so it's gonna look quick, but we'll let you know how long this actually took at the end of this. We have our piece cut and spot drilled out. I cheated at the end there. I thought, you know what, why don't I just keep this piece of metal in here just in case for rigidity, or we may want to, you know, weld to it. And that took an hour and a half. You can imagine on a piece that I had out of the car, you can imagine how long that would take to try to do on the vehicle there, not to mention like getting this stuff off which is like a seam sealer, or I don't even know what this adhesive is. It's almost like a sound ender, whatever it is. It was tough. Now comes the tricky part where I need to figure out how much to cut out of the chassis. You can see this is where the panel met here, so I'm going to leave it at that. I think that's the right way to do it. Just to trim that down a bit there, come up along here, and continue over to here and have that in place there. Ta-da! 2.5 hours later, I think I'm satisfied with this piece being fitted up. Where to start? There was so much to do here. Thankfully, I did keep this piece intact. As you can see, I was able to overlay this right here, which is nice. There's a lot of like fiddling to get it lined up here, but now that this is in place, that's really good. I think I'll drill a couple holes and we'll be able to tack that on there. This hole here is, I think, like 118 mil from here to on both sides here, so we are straight, which is awesome, awesome, awesome. Here I did have to slot this a bit, and like what I did is I just pulled this out actually and laid it underneath. This fits up to the frame rail really nicely, so we're just going to be able to weld that onto there. This back here is pretty good. You can see there's a gap here, but thankfully I left this piece, so I may be able to just fold this over and reuse it as to just like plug this little hole here. I'm really pumped on this. I think this turned out really well. Next up here, I think I'm gonna prep all this because this does need a ton of prep work, and then we can tack weld it in place. Quick update here. Dave and I went back and forth about this, but we're not going to weld that other piece in there until we have somewhat of our muffler location finalized. I don't want to get ahead of myself, weld that stuff in, and then for whatever reason have issues. So what I've gone ahead and done is cut more parts of the trunk out. I was hoping to keep this brace in here. As you can see, this isn't really structural. I talked to a bunch of people. They said you can remove this, but I thought it would just be nice to keep. Unfortunately, this area here has to go because the muffler, the pipe that exits, it kind of turns and hits here. You can see I actually have the original M5 piece right here. They also notch it out, so I think we're going to have to do something very similar like this. So with this panel out, we still have the issue where the muffler is hitting this corner, and I want to try to make a nice clean straight cut, and I don't think I can do that with the die grinder. So I've got the Milwaukee Sawzall with a really long torch blade, and I'm thinking if I come in here and I kind of line it up like this, I should be able to take it out and make this nice clean one-way cut where I'm not afterwards I'm not trying to figure out and like patch it improperly. So let's see how this goes. I don't know if this is going to actually work or not, but we're going to find out real quick here. Oof. Very, very jaggedy. Not great. I got to kind of like get it started here.
Yeah, that'll be the hard part, getting it started for sure.
Oh boy. And it's so long. It's kind of, and with the sheet metal, it doesn't help.
Yeah.
You can see.
Flexing the sheet metal.
Yeah, see, it doesn't, it's just gonna destroy the metal up here. New plan here, we've cut this out of the cardboard, mimicking our area that we need to cut. And I just went in here and marked it. And I think that should give us a straight cut here. Who knows? Now I'll come in with the grinder and I think this will clean up pretty well. I do a bit more cutting out here, but now we do have the piping clearing our floor. And as you can see, it looks to line up extremely well. Like this mount here is perfect with the placement of this. I mean, there's probably a little bit of movement that needs to be done, but I think at this point, we're pretty damn good. You guys just witnessed some serious CAD work there. Our cardboard aided design has worked out pretty good. I'm happy with it. As you can see, here's what the tunnel will look like. Here is our cardboard template, and here is our piece of sheet metal. What we're going to do is leave a little bit of extra on the sides because, truth be told, you know, this is cardboard, and as soon as you cut it out of metal, we all know how that goes. Now the corners don't compress and nothing fits, so I want to make sure I leave enough so we can cut in and we're not screwed, and then I got to go get a whole nother sheet like this. So I think what I'm going to do is be pretty generous on the outside here as such. Well, I think I've put some this disc to good use. It is about as done as it could be. I don't think this thing has any life left in it. And now we've got a rough outline of our piece here. If some of you are wondering, what we're going to do here is we're actually going to try to bend this, believe it or not, in an L shape so we don't have to weld the two pieces together. We have a break here. So we are being very ambitious on this. I hope it works. You never know. It's going to make it a little bit more difficult, but I think it would be much nicer if it was just one piece. We are headed into uncharted territory for me. I've never bent a piece of metal like this on a break, so I hope this goes well. Otherwise, we're going to have to recut this. And to make, I don't know, matters worse per se, we have a Harbor Freight brake here, which the reviews say is complete and utter crap, and it doesn't work very well. But I'm thinking that's because people are trying to bend thicker gauge steel. What we have here is, I'm pretty sure this is 18. Yeah, this is 18 gauge, so this should bend up. I've given a little bit of gap, like it said in the instructions here. I've lined this up, so really I should just be able to pull up on this and create the gap. It's going. Oh boy.
The power, PT, the power.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite a bit of metal. Wow. I'm impressed. I mean, it did exactly what it was supposed to. It looks like it's got a perfect 90-degree bend in it. So yeah, the huge challenge now is getting for this to fit in there in one piece, which I think the big problem is, as you can see out here, this piece is actually a little bit bigger. We're gonna need to bend this as well to tuck it in a bit. panel is in place, and I'm telling you guys, I thought this was not gonna go as well as it did. I was convinced we were gonna have to redo it. When I started this off, the panel, we cut it too big. I was like, oh, it's not gonna fit, it's not gonna fit. And after about an hour of like slowly reducing it down to size and kind of shaping it, it's dropped in here, and I could not be happier with the results for my first time doing this. It fits up exceptionally well. There are like no gaps that we need to worry about. Like, this is just gonna weld in very, very nicely. Now, you may be wondering, what are we gonna do about the flatness of this? Because some of you know with a piece of metal like this, what you kind of get is, even if you weld it in, you're gonna get a lot of like noise and vibration. So what we're gonna do is bust out the bead roller that we borrowed from Ken. I've marked out our area for the bead roll here. You can see we're gonna do the long one. This is where the hangers will go, and then this is just another piece for reinforcement. This is also a first. Here is our bead roller. Dave and I just did a couple of passes to see how it works. And you can see right here, it's pretty dang good. I think it's gonna add a rigidity and just give a little bit of texture to give it a look. I tried to mimic the lines of the OEM from the other side. The one thing we did try was radiusing out, like changing the width of the bead roll. You can see this one was much tighter, and then this guy now is wider, and I like this one better. So I'm a little worried. This did kind of warp a little bit. We did measure it though from here edge to edge. You can see our numbers to make sure that this piece isn't going to shrink. Now the whole point here is you got to make sure you keep this thing straight. That's why we drew the lines. Okay, slow, 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 slow. I think, yeah, we're going to the end, right? Yeah. Okay. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and keep going. Stop. Yep. Yep. Slow, slow, slow. There's our finished product. We did get a bit of distortion in the metal, and I did a quick Google, and of course, the proper way to do this would be to come in with an English wheel and stretch the metal the opposite way that you're going to bead roll, and that really minimizes this. But because we're welding this in place, I think we're gonna be fine. I did contemplate putting a couple of rolls here, but after seeing this distort, I don't really want to do it. We're going to be covering this up. You're going to see we have a lot of stuff, sound deadening going on, some spray on boom mat and all this stuff, which will really keep the noise down to a minimum. Now that everything has been cleaned and prepped, it is time to move on to welding. As you can see, I've drilled a couple of holes here. That's essentially to mimic the spot welds. What I'm going to come in and do now is weld in these areas, and that's really going to add a bunch of stiffness and rigidity into these panels. And then I'm going to tack weld along these areas here just to get this into place. We are not essentially welding everywhere. We don't need to do that. The urethane seam sealer that we're using will work as a bonding agent as well, so that'll add strength. Finally, there you have it, guys. We have ourselves a second muffler hanging in place. I think this went better than I expected. It's just been such a good journey to do this. I'm so glad I went this way rather than trying to like cut the whole floor out. I think this was a quarter of the work, and as you can see, everything lines up so nice. Like the tips are all, or the mufflers are at the same height. Everything's turned out really well. As you guys saw, really what for this side, all I did was the same thing. I just built like an aluminum spacer for this side of the hanger. I'm not going to run both hangers again. I don't think I need them. I did drill a third hole there just to bolt it on so this heat shield can stay in place and it doesn't rattle. So we've got like a little bit of support back there. But otherwise, man, what a great job. Quick pro tip or amateur tip, when I was welding this piece of metal in place, what I didn't realize is I had my Miller set to auto set on the feed, and it was just feeding too much rod versus the amount of heat that it was putting into it, and it really wasn't doing a good job of penetrating. So once I adjusted my speed there, I was able to get much better welds, and I think that was key to kind of getting really good penetration along here. And this panel fit up so well, like you guys can see. It's nicely done. Like, I'm so pumped on this. So that is officially a wrap on this one. Check out how good this thing looks with the bumper. My goodness, so good. Now, if you guys are interested in basically learning how to MIG weld or fabricate, definitely check out etsfab.com. That's a training course that's provided to everybody through HP Academy. So our friends over there, we actually are offering a 75% or $75 discount code off of, for example, the MIG welding course, which is $200. So it's a huge savings, and it'll teach you the basics of it. If you've never welded, it's certainly something to go through. I know I wish I had that before I learned how to MIG weld, because it just gives you good foundations. And if you're looking to see somebody do a complete transformation and cut out the rear floor and do amazing work, go check out Trevor over at Motion Auto TV. They are doing an Evo wagon conversion off of a regular Lancer, so there's been some serious fabrication work over there, so check that channel out. And as always, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Think about hitting that notification bell and subscribing, and if you're feeling generous, check out our Patreon.
Is this a concourse restoration,
Oh,
Peter?
yeah,
Going for that
man.
OEM
Oh, yeah. Oh,
urethane
yeah.
look? My God, man.
I figured I've got to do it. I've got to do it.
Listen, we got a date with the dyno on the racetrack. You're wasting time with brushing urethane?